How's it going, Simon?
Good, good.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I know you're a busy man and you're able to accommodate. As I told you, it's going to be a part of series of kind of videos I want to create in a way to create some educations and knowledge base about how important on different ways to look on the accounting. So before we kind of jump in and start kind of chit chat, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Great. So, obviously, you know me as Simon, CEO and partner and co-founder of Sfir Consulting. But it's I'm coming from the accounting space, so my entire life and history has been finance, and
But the reason that me and you are working together, as well as the reason that you're here, you guys are not a standard accounting.
that's right.
Like your bread and butter is not dealing with run their payroll
That's
or
right.
doing their taxes in every April.
Yeah, we're what you would call like a red button company or a consulting company that does system work. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a couple of different main lines of work, but the main thing that we produce best, I would say, is ERP implementations and just month-to-month financials.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Let's narrow it down to let's say less accounting language and kind of more.
We produce financials for shareholders and people who need to see numbers and explain it to them in a very simple yet sophisticated way. That's probably the best way to do it. We do a lot of
Okay.
cleanup. Yeah.
But on top of that, you guys are specializing in implementations of, and people are working building their ERP and the CRMs and everything. You are a little bit involved on the sales side, but your specialty is on the accounting.
Correct.
And that is something that a lot of people doesn't know. And this is kind of why we're making that series, because there's not many companies like you guys around.
That's right.
Because it's not that you work with different platforms, and but you're specializing on the software. So technically, you guys are accounting, but developers in the same time.
Yeah.
In a
yeah.
way, the mix in between them.
Yeah, our industry is really polarizing, right? There's not a lot of, let's call it traditional accountants,
Yeah.
are typically doing a lot of just month to month.
Mhm.
They do year end, they do assurance work, they do some, investigation work. But in our field, in our line of work, in our specialty, it's really more about using systems to take advantage of modern day technology. That's really the best way to put it.
So pretty much, you're a modern accountant.
Yeah, yeah. So we just pair up every company that we work with a software that makes sense
Mhm.
for that industry, whether it's NetSuite or some other platforms or Zoho or whatever might be on the market that's good for them at the time. And then we just cater that solution to the business needs. That's pretty much what it is. Yeah.
But why there is no more companies like you guys in the market?
Software companies right now, they use partners, and partners, they either don't like to dabble in finance or they just try it out and then things go terribly wrong.
Okay.
So you have two kind of sides of the coin, I would say, from an accounting perspective. But most of the time, you don't have a lot of consulting companies that can do the accounting and understand the compliance side of it,
Mhm.
but also understand how things should operate internally in a business. Yeah.
Okay. Again, from my experience, kind of under UTS, when we implemented our Zoho system, it was all about how we can get more control on our financials, but also how we can automate it. Prior of kind of being engaged with your firms, I had a few people in the team from account receivable, account payable, in-house CPA, and outside CPA that we still have for the tax planning and kind of the end of the year.
Mhm.
But we're able to implement a lot of automations and a lot of more knowledge that we have of knowing how every department is doing, but narrowing down to the T, like to the literally to the dots on everything. That it's again, it was for us, it was a huge difference. Like we're now over a year since implementation, and I see the results from that area. That is again, it's a huge saving. Like today, I kind of want this kind of our first session to kind of go over and what do you think is the biggest problem kind of in your industry and with clients that you engage in, kind of where's the gap?
Traditionally speaking, like when we look at automations and modern style system work,
Yeah.
you have a lot of companies that are driving that from the manufacturing side. So when you're doing manufacturing, a lot of that has been automated, or that's really the main driver of the push. Operations, right?
Okay.
On the finance side, it's always like the last thing in line. When you want to automate finance, it's like forget about accounting. Yeah, accounting is more of like a reactionary transaction, whereas
Okay.
everything else is operational. You want to get things out, you want to get things executed, you want to get things across the line. But accounting is like more of a reactionary approach where you're doing follow ups on certain things. You're doing record keeping, right? So it's all a little bit more admin related rather than producing, let's call it, right? sales, marketing, things that are really driving the top line. So in our line of work, it's very hard to find companies that want to focus on this. And when you do find the consultants, they're typically married to a software. So you would
Yes.
have the people who are like Sage consultants, NetSuite consultants who love One World. Um,
Or they just know one word.
oh, exactly, and that's it. And they don't know anything else. They don't
Okay.
understand how businesses should operate. And in our line of work, it's very tough to find good companies who are just looking out for the best interest, because most companies do not hire people with accounting experience. They hire tech people, right? They don't know numbers.
Again, I found a lot of similarity between both of our companies because by the approach.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the modern type of in the accounting side. I'm pretty sure there is a lot of firms that don't like your way of doing business because
They hate us.
you're killing the old way of how stuff need to get done,
Yeah.
and pretty much by holding the client by the balls because people are afraid to change the content because if I'll change it and it's not true and what are the guys saying, like I think accountant and lawyers people are just scared changing them,
Yeah.
but there is better ways. Like there is better system. There is better to implement it. There is more education, more knowledge to get done. There is tasks that you don't have to pay someone to do it. There is a system that can do it for you,
Mm-hmm.
and that is my approach again. And all again in my field in UTS again, anywhere from the glazing work we do all the way to security work
Yeah.
is how you simplify, how you dumb everything down, make it easier. And you know what? I'll make it everything easier that you don't have to pay me to do it. Call me for the specialty stuff
Yeah. Exactly.
because it's creating a module of growth. Because in any industry today, you won't get 50 to 100 A-type employees that you can hire so you can just bring more work and bring more work. Like you need to create some automation so the client has a quick return from his side.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he's coming you, it's a ticket that's worth it.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
he's not calling you for the few $100. Like I don't want to do your end of year. But you want to do implementation or with a new system or with a new dashboard with some information. All right, there is a little bit more meat.
Yeah.
It's worth it, but because it's not paying you a retainer in a way that costs you every month, is also able to kind of afford it more
Yeah.
because you also see the return.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing in any industry. If you're looking in the new way of again automation, AI, new way to look of it. Don't think about how you make the customer stick with you because he have to. Make it stick with you because he want to be next to you. He want to learn. He appreciate. He understand that you're not selling him something. You're actually helping them. And I think this is kind of very similar approach that kind of both companies have. That is very different.
Mm-hmm.
That I also get a lot of pushback from a lot of companies in my industry because they pretty much I'm taking business away from them or I'm making business to disappear like specific areas because I'm showing customers, hey, you don't need me. I'll find a different solution that will do one big project and after that you don't need to have a locksmith in your building. Or we'll do one big thing and now you don't need monitoring because the system is going to do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm killing people retainer. But I don't do it in a way to kill it. I'm doing it in a way to I'm giving it as a product so the client can use it, he can grow that, and then he can call me, but it's also sustainable for me. Because at the end of the day, again, it's business. I'm going to look what is my return, right? I'm not able to get to the 200 or 300 techs outside in that level that is able to be managed.
Yeah.
And even if I can, the overhead is going to be
Astronomical.
after. Does it worth it?
Probably not.
It will be, and even if I can get almost technicians and the proper people and the right people to manage that operation, can I keep the same level of service? 100% not.
Yeah, not with a system.
Mm.
Without a system, right?
Without a system.
Yeah, the challenging part I think with this industry is that most of the people that you consult, they're typically on the finance side, they're accounting firms, like traditional accounting firms, or they're public auditors or people who don't really have internal business experience.
Mhm.
Most of the people in our firm that are dealing with the system implementation work, they have either worked for the big companies internally in finance, or they work for small family-owned businesses, and
Okay.
everything in between. And that's where the benefit really comes, because they understand, the way that things are actually flowing inside a business in real life, rather than as an external, person who's just doing taxes, right? Very different approaches, very different mentality of having people internally versus externally. We usually come into engagements and it's typically, everybody versus finance. That's what I always say. So if you look at it, it's like the benefit is really underneath. And when the company is ready mentally and the team's ready, it's like such a big boost in their ROI, like especially from like an efficiency perspective, that they're like, why didn't we do this earlier, right?
Again, but how we creating the education, and this is kind of the goal of kind of
Mhm.
this series of videos with me, how we create that education is that not necessarily they have to go to Sphere or to go to Metador for the consultation to implement, but people can use it as a guide
Mhm.
of learning and even doing it themselves on tools that they have today of understanding it, or even coming to their accountant and say, hey, or bookkeeper, instead of doing that and that, I want to do that area.
Right.
Or in the next few weeks, we're going to do also another one with Nick, that is my other accountant,
Yeah.
that on the tax planning.
Mhm.
That tax planning is something very important to have a good lawyer for tax planning so you can plan ahead. In the same time, you also need to have a good bookkeeper. Like each one of them has its own specialty
That's
in
right.
a way. Kind of what is the comments you want to give, let's say, to someone that is saying, hey, I don't have the ability to afford to do like a huge implementation right now, or a small company, or they're starting a company, like what is the tip you're going to give them to kind of start building themselves more in the way of the mindset
Yeah, I
and
think I think using your current system to
any
see
system.
any system to see if you've underutilized the current like flow, right? Because even most companies, I would say like 80%, 75% of companies are just underutilizing what they currently have.
Okay.
So they just implement the baseline and they don't look at all the other bells and whistles that they might have. So, for example, QuickBooks is a great tool, but it might not serve a purpose once you hit a certain threshold where you're looking for more, you want to build out more. But even people who are on QuickBooks are not fully utilizing it.
But this is with every software.
Yeah, yeah.
And I speak with a lot of the softwares I work with, even the tools we work in the different companies.
Mhm.
And usually the conversation is that most of the users, usually over 50%, are using maybe one to two functions.
Yeah,
No one is actually fully utilizing the software as a whole, what it
yeah,
was designed for. They're buying the software for that feature and then buying that software for one feature. And pretty much by kind of just putting a check marks on everything,
yeah. That's what I was just gonna say. Check marks,
yeah,
right?
they're actually creating a huge mess
Yeah,
because they become, again, time management is not there because I have to move data from here to move data to over here. And when they see, let's say, a price to implement or integrate that and that, they're like, no, it's that expensive. But where's the time that I have to take the data from here, download it, take space from my hard drive, upload it, that I'm taking consideration I'm not deleting it after like most people and
yeah.
leave it on my computer. And it's I don't have proper file management system. And moving over here, like how, let's say in your industry, like how time management is coming to effect.
On the software side or on the accounting side, like
Let's
the
say
month-to-month accounting, or the software side from an implementation
from both,
perspective.
because of the software side, you're able to be, again, you guys are dealing with huge customers,
Yeah,
and you have a decent sized team, but you don't have a huge team, but you
that's
also
right.
don't have the need for it.
Yeah, I think internally we just are a lot more automation driven, and
Okay.
everybody on the team has a very similar mindset, and that's really important. It's hiring people around you who will give that same kind of energy back. Because if you're just sitting there and you're still filing cabinets, and your cousin said, "Oh, I got to post this entry this way," okay, the cousin said, then you're in a different ballgame. But if you want to be serious and move with the times,
Mhm.
especially at how quickly things are moving now, like look at how fast we have software coming up and down. I think a really big chunk of this is we had so much funding in the last 5 years to
Mhm.
be able to have all these startups really start and explode. So, for example, we have a select few software programs that we typically like to use, but most people don't even know this. But Salesforce had an entire accounting system developed, and it was published, I think, in 2018 or 2019, and it was called Financial Force. And funny enough, it didn't hit the market the same way that Salesforce did. And you ask like why, right? Like it's such a great brand, such a great software, very high level, super expensive. It should have a market somewhere. But you have competitors like NetSuite, SAP for HANA, like big software that has been killing the market for years. But then you're looking, yeah,
One question:
yeah,
are they killing the market? And they are great softwares. I
yeah.
work with a few of them. Are they killing the market, or there is a fear around that accounting area that
There
people are
is.
very afraid to do the move and what happened? Like how rare is, like, when, let's say, you have a new client reaching out to you, I'm pretty sure all of them has a fear like, I'm going to lose my accountant, I'm going
Yeah.
to change that software, I'm going to move from that bank, it's my lawyer, like I shared
It's
stuff
always
with
a
him, like
sensitive
it's
topic.
sensitive, it's very feared, like
Yeah.
I think some people it's easier for them to get divorced than changing accountants.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But you know what? That's the industry that we're in. And in software, I think the biggest scare is just not being able to handle it internally.
But how are you going to change it?
Well,
How are you breaking that fear?
I think that a lot of the time it's just being patient with the clients. So we don't really force the implementations.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, I would say there's a big trend with software like NetSuite, for example, that is really good with sales.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll sell it to like any kind of company that doesn't necessarily need it, but has so many bells and whistles.
Okay.
So sometimes the business owner just goes into the actual company and the software without realizing how much, like how massive that whole project is.
Because he didn't do a proper research, or we were sold on a feature.
Oversold feature, we're growing, we're expanding, we have cash. Like it's a lot of problems that don't really get to see, you don't get to see until you're in it, and then you realize, oh wow, NetSuite needs like 2 to 4 people just to manage it, right?
Yeah.
But then I think that a big part of this is just understanding the market. And you don't have a lot of companies that will tell you point blank, hey, you're being oversold. Like that's not really necessary for your size. Hey, we could stick to Sage Intact, or we could stick
Yeah.
to Zoho, which is phenomenal. So it's like such good options coming out, and it's just about market timing, really. Because today the same software is not really the same as 5 years ago, right?
No, and it's, again, I'm more in that world of softwares lately and implementation. If a software will stay the same the way it is 5 years from now,
Yeah.
it's time to leave them.
I think the problem with this whole side of things is also that it's a check mark internally for a lot of people. I moved us to a different software. It's like such a big, title. We did this implementation, but look at how like implementations fail all the time.
Again, some people more involved, some people less, but
Yeah,
implementing a software doesn't matter what is the size of the company. And after I did a few of them in the last few years, is interesting. It's painful.
yeah,
It's very
Expensive.
painful, and I'm not even talking about price wise.
yeah,
Mentally, it's painful.
yeah.
There is so many pushbacks from employees. People doesn't want to deal with new softwares, new processes. Like it's hard, to be honest.
It's mentally hard. It's expensive.
It's expensive.
A lot of companies fail because of
Yeah.
implementations,
Yeah.
and you can get yourself in such a hole that it takes double the amount of money to recover.
Mhm.
Because all of this is accounting. You have monthly filings, you have compliance you have to take care of with your state, with your provinces, your payroll tax. It's so much stuff that has to maintain.
Yep.
And if you're falling behind, you're really screwed, and that could be expensive as all hell.
It's not only that. Again, that I want to implement the software for accounting. Perfect. It's giving me a check mark accounting. It has all the features I need. What about marketing?
Yeah.
What about sales? What about actually scheduling the work, like communication, project management? Like it's basic thing that is existing in every business.
Yeah.
Like I have a PM, and we're in the construction and security world. You have a PM in the
That's
accounting
right.
world. The basic is still there.
That's right.
And people are jumping to software, and then okay, so we got the Microsoft project to run the project, and we're using the calendar because we're using the G Suites. Each one of them amazing software,
Yeah.
but they don't stick. So what we're creating now, we're adding more people, and in the end of the day, we say, hey, we added this software, but we didn't get to our return. But it's not because of the software. It's because the software I chose or the other softwares I'm using created more tasks, more steps that stuff need to be making. Our overhead going up, our revenue is coming down, and it's kind of we're failing from that implementations because nobody actually taking consideration there is other stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big problem, right? Because you look at how companies operate. A lot of bigger companies, they all operate in silos.
Yeah.
Okay, the operations team, we got our, Asana, check marks are being done.
Yeah.
Monday.com, phenomenal software,
Amazing
but
software.
it doesn't communicate well with other, tech unless you put a ton of money behind it. But then you got two different systems that are constantly in maintenance.
Like for us, we moved everything on Zoho. So now I'm cutting everything and moving everything on Zoho. I know Zoho play very nice in between his own mesh of Zoho.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily work very nice after you use third party in way to integrate other stuff. But Zoho has a lot of features. I can stay there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see other softwares that I really want, but I'm like, I want it, but it doesn't meet my circle. I have to stay here.
Maybe that's a good thing to some extent.
For me, it's a good thing because with my ADHD and kind of excitement about new things, it's put me in boundaries in a way.
Yeah, it's restricting you. You're like, oh
Restricting
no, I
me,
can't
yeah,
do
I
this. Too
can't.
much risk.
Yeah.
But it's good because at the same time, it kind of keeps you in check because most people love the bells and whistles because right now it's all about that. Every software coming, there's so many software companies coming out now.
Yeah.
You can open Google and find like 5 that came out in the last 2 months this solution for this payment solution. It's
I
endless.
think during COVID, with everything happening in COVID, again, there was not an easy time, but the creation
Yeah.
that done from COVID, we gain a lot.
Yeah,
from
all the
COVID.
cash. Yeah.
Yeah, we gain a lot. We gain a lot of tech.
Yeah.
Like a lot of tech that is coming, and kind of AI now put on steroids on everything.
Yeah.
And it's like moving. Like I'm literally excited, like to look like a year or 2 years or 5 years ahead, because to be honest, even if I would try to guess what it will be tech wise, I don't think I'm going to be ever close, because I think we're now very similar to the times like in the early 1920s that kind of all the factories and the industrial revolution happened.
Yeah.
We're in a technology revolution right now. If I'm going 2 years back, to write an email, I use templates of email that I was customizing in a way to make it much easier. Right now, I have a module that I can train him to not to answer exactly the way I answer, and he's going to draft me stuff 80% the way that I would draft it, because he has my knowledge base of the company, knowledge base about our product, and
Your
everything.
personality, technically.
It took me, again, because of my accent and the kind of, I'm also dyslexic, so it's a bit hard for me to pronounce some words. I had to teach him not to use specific words, because I'll never use that word in a conversation. I cannot pronounce them.
Listen, you got to use the tools. It's like everybody's doing it nowadays. I won't lie to you. It's been used everywhere. Like what else are you gonna do?
Again, I think it's a powerful tool. Mm-hmm. People are afraid that it's going to be like a type of a robot, that change people. It's a tool. Yeah. It's the same thing that DeWalt went from 12 volt to 18 volt batteries, and now it's much more powerful tool. Yep. You know how to use it. It's great. You don't know how to use it, it won't work.
I think that you're very lucky to be in this shoe personally, and your team is also lucky to benefit from it. Your team is doing phenomenal, but they're also looking up to you, because not a lot of companies have business owners and leaders that actually want to take the step forward, that are open to it. Let's look at my industry.
Okay.
You have the typical mom and pop shop who's still doing filing cabinets, pulling them, locking them. Oh, the bottom one, that like it still got those. Then you got the people who have taken the next step. They're using at least like some paperless modules, right?
Or in-house server, whatever.
In-house server, that's like the biggest step 2.0, let's call it.
Yeah.
And then you got the next people who are kind of a little bit more on the tech side. They got Work Drive, they got different Dropbox, Google Drive. They're using the tech. And then you got the people who are even more, that are being efficient, right? So you can be on the newest and greatest, but you might not be utilizing it to the extent that it should be.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about it, you're just slicing the industry between a couple of different people and groups of people who are using the tech. Like right now, we're going to engagements where they got like 10 filing cabinets, rooms with filing cabinets. And I'm just like, I thought, are we in 2008? Like 2010? 2015? Like, fine, okay. No, we're in 2025 now, right? Like, we should be moving forward and forward.
Again, legally, you still have to have a storage to keep the stuff for 3 years in a storage room, but you don't use it. It's just kind of a backup.
From an accounting perspective, in CRA, from CRA's perspective, from IRS perspective, you don't need physical copies anymore. You don't.
That's true. Yeah,
but again, right. For operations, for ISO, for other things that you might need to, fine. You might need certain
ISO, I think, required.
Right? So there are certain things that might need it. I understand. I get it. But at the same time, the faster we move towards this paperless, the faster those organizations are also going to start saying, oh, wow, maybe we're also behind.
But again, you're taking an example of businesses that actually have a file system.
That's
Don't
right.
forget that most likely 50% of the business, again, from entrepreneurs, self-proprietorship, whatever, their way of doing accounting is once a year or once a quarter, once a 6 months, depends how what the setup. I work with a few people that putting everything in a bag, and it's literally like a Walmart bag. Here you go.
Yeah.
And just do my taxes.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a conversation about with my other accountant. We had a dinner last night, and we were actually discussing about it, and about kind of people coming and kind of complaining about the rates to do kind of their end of year and kind of what is their return and everything. And I was telling him actually a funny story that I had with one of my partners, and we got a report for the return. And he's like, hey, I just got only this amount. Like it's maybe 10% from what I got last year. And this is how much he's paying us to do the return. I told him, the cost for the return is regardless.
Yeah.
Don't compare the return. You have to do it legally.
Yeah.
It's a requirement. We have to do it. But it doesn't even make sense that a person will get a higher return every year. Like, depends on the expense. It depends what happened. Depends what everything happened. But taxes, changes of taxes, rates, everything. Yeah. Okay, so when people are getting a return, let's say, for example, we got everybody here in Canada now received a carbon tax return. How many people know what is it for?
That's the thing, right? You got to stay current with the information. It's a tough one. Yeah,
But again, like if you go on the news right now, everybody's talking about carbon
yeah,
tax.
yeah,
And it's very related to the accounting side.
yeah.
And there is a lot of saving and different ways, and it's mostly for bigger companies that is implement that will have to pay and have to kind of meet with the standard. But eventually, even if it's going for a big company like company A that doing whatever,
Hmm.
for that company A, they have employees that have subcontractors that have another small company that work with them.
Yeah, yeah,
In the end of the day, it's really going to narrow down to Joe that working for the back of his truck. And I think there is a gap. Like, I have actually a guest that is going to be joining me first week, in like 2 to 3 weeks. We have also a session, and he's in that area of the carbon tax
wow.
and the solar. And I told him, like, before we're going to talk about stuff that you do and how you do so, I want to create something education. Let's talk about what is the carbon tax, what is it
Yeah.
came from, what is it related for, like what type, like what is it.
Yeah,
Because I remember the first time that his company actually reached out to me for some engagement and everything. I went and I see kind of what they do, and I'm like, you guys doing something in
Yeah.
like something with on the green side.
Voodoo, yeah.
Voodoo, I don't understand.
Yeah,
And I read everything, and I was sitting, but also there is, again, as a demographic, people are afraid to say I don't know, especially
Yeah.
for business owners. For some business owners, I think asking is knowledge. Like, again, you saw it even during meetings that we have, and I'm
Yeah.
like, stop, what is this word?
Yeah.
And because I want to know, because if I'm missing a code word that you're saying, maybe I don't understand the whole conversation now, because
That's right.
you talked on one thing and I spoke on the other thing. But a lot of people are afraid to ask and say, like, how many of your clients actually stop you and say, explain me that again? Or how many of your clients actually you feel that you're sitting with them, going over their financials, and they at least got 85% to 100% of everything you said?
I think that from our perspective, like with the way that we run it, is we kind of come to them with like, hey, this is what you need to see. Because a lot of people, especially in your shoes, are super busy, swamped. You don't have time to filter through things or to really dig too deep into, compliance on RITCs back in the day, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have any time to do that.
Yeah.
So from our side, we want to make things as easy as possible so that you retain things as much as possible in live and as updated as possible throughout the month or whatever. It's life.
Yeah, but you're not always engaged. Like, I remember a few times I told you, like, we need to have another conversation because I'm not in a place to actually receive information. But I feel that in a lot of meetings that I've been, actually other people who are with me in the meeting or whatever, people are afraid to see, like, the people who are going to look down is like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah, yeah,
What is
yeah,
it?
yeah.
And a great example that I had, I have a very good friend, and is more than a friend. He's a mentor. In his 70s, he's also in the construction industry. He has a huge, beautiful company that he built.
Hmm.
And one day usually I meet with him over the weekend in his office. We cook, have some drinks together, and and again, keep in mind, he can be my grandfather, but he's a really good friend of mine. Really amazing person. I actually offered him to come, but he's so modest with legs on the ground, and it's a person who did very well to himself. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, we have a conversation, and I'm sharing with him some information. And during that meeting, I'm using one of the code words. I think I remember. Again, I also have an accent. I speak fast. Some people lose me in some areas. I was using some code words, and then like, stop. What is that? And I just said, oh yeah, keep going. And on the way back, when I left his office, I'm like, this is awesome. With everything this person had, I can be his grandson. He didn't think about ego. He didn't understand something I said. He's like, stop,
Wait a second.
clarified.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I just know it by the full name, not by the short of the code of that.
Yeah.
And he keep going. And I was always talking with people about that. People is not asking. He kind of proved it to me that there is two types.
Yeah.
Of people. I found that a lot of people are afraid just to look like they're ignorant in some areas. But if we don't ask, how we learn? Like, as a kid, how will you learn how to say that, or like, Dad, what is that? Dad, what is that? How is it called that? But
Yeah.
this is how we learn stuff as kids. What is different now? Like, why we're adult, we stop learning. Especially if you're in business, you never stop
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah. It's every day is a learning curve. It's just like information coming at you from different areas, different industries, even different divisions within your own business, right?
100%.
And it's always constantly moving, new things coming up, right? Especially the tech. It's just crazy.
It's only not only the tech, but again, look, let's say from an HR point of view, for hiring people,
Yeah.
you have the business owner that is afraid to hire someone that is better than him. But I understand over the years, I want A and A plus. I'm a curious person. I will try to learn. I will have something to say about anything. But my goal, if I'm hiring someone for that position, he need to be better than me in that
Yeah.
one, because I want to bring someone I can learn from him.
That's right.
Usually, when we part ways, that he cannot teach me anymore.
Yeah.
I need someone that is also going to
Challenge you.
learn.
Yeah.
You challenge me exactly. That I will say, you know what, this is what I think, but I'll let you lead it because you have more experience and more knowledge than me.
Yeah.
And he's going to stay up to date with how stuff is changing.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of businesses and other people that we work, it's more as a
Ego.
a lot of ego,
Yeah.
a lot of ego,
It's
and
unfortunate.
lack of honesty. But not honesty with people, honesty with myself.
Yeah.
As a business owner, am I honest with myself that, or I believe enough with myself that I like? Why I won't want to hire someone that's better than me? It's making my life easier. He came to work in my team.
Yeah, it's a blessing. If you think
What is
about
the
it, the
fear?
same thing is the same fear of having people come in and try to implement new things, bring in new ideas. It's the same category of what you're talking about,
100%.
right? You have a person coming in, consulting, spending their time, coming in to do a better job, trying to say, hey, look, there's an alternative here. Here's are the reasons X, Y, Z. Here's the ROI. Let's sit
Yeah.
down and map it out. You, as the big boss, you say, no, we're good. We're good the way that things are.
Yeah.
That's a very typical thing. You know, we always have like the CFO versus a CEO or the COO versus CEO who are always in battles, micro battles, to try to make changes in system, changes in process.
It's a
changes
battle
in
because they
dynamic.
don't want to implement stuff because they're afraid of their position.
I think it's
Their
because of their
control.
control, right? Saying, okay, well, I should have thought of this. I'm the CEO, or I should have brought this to the table, right? Whereas the CFO understands the finance side, CEO operations, you got to bring that stuff to the table. And the CEO has to say, okay, that's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that to us. Let's do this together. Let's map it out.
Yeah, because sometimes they don't work together; they actually work against each other.
That's right. Yeah.
But this is more, I think, in high corporate
Yeah.
that's happening, and there is a bit more drama.
Yeah.
I think if every high corporate, the mindset will change to a small business
Yeah.
mindset, I'll tell you even more. I think if the mindset of running a country
Yeah.
will change to a mindset of a
Yeah.
small business,
Yeah.
it's going to be great.